Hello and welcome. We're glad you can join us for a great conversation today about turning the degree audit into your most strategic lever. We are joined today by Kim Shipwright from Stellic, Rhonda Kitch, our Acro Press president from Cornell University, and Megan Hicks from Cornell College. Before we get started, I would like to remind everyone that this webinar is recorded and it will be on our Acro website here shortly. If you haven't already, please do turn closed captions, and also please do write your questions for the panel using the Q&A feature. And you can ask your questions at any time. You can ask anonymously. And just one more thing, at the end, we will have a one question poll. So please be on the lookout for that. And without any further ado, I would like to hand it over to Kim. Thank you, Kim.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And again, welcome to everyone. We are thrilled that you're taking time out of your busy day to join us. It should be very informative. Again, my name is Kim Shipwright. I serve as a strategic advisor with Stellic. My professional career was spent entirely in higher ed. I have over 40 years experience in admissions and records areas. But in addition to my campus responsibilities, I've always been very active in Acro, and so I'm especially thrilled to be collaborating with them on this session today. I've been working with Stellic the past several years, kind of helping to foster relationships with other institutions who want to improve the student experience on their campus, and it's been very rewarding. As mentioned earlier, we're very fortunate today to have two dynamic presenters with us, Rhonda Kitch from Cornell University and Megan Hicks from Cornell College. And we'll be introducing them in greater detail coming up shortly. Our presentation today is really multifaceted, and I'm sure you're going to gain some extremely beneficial insights from our expert presenters. But our overall focus will be on making the degree audit the most strategic lever to address all the various initiatives and challenges you're seeing on your campuses or in your registrar's offices today. Among other things, we'll be talking primarily about improving access to data, transforming the user experience, both for students and for other campus users, and introducing automation into various campus workflows. Our presenters will explain how Stellic serves as a strategic lever for them and their institutions, both now and what the impact they anticipate seeing in the future. As mentioned, I just want to remind you, please post any questions in the chat as we go along, and we will try and allow time at the conclusion of today's presentation for any remaining questions. We'll also provide a follow-up email with details on how to access some additional information on this topic, should you wish to do that. Before we go further, I want to provide a little background on Stellic for those of you who may not be familiar with this. Stellic is a degree management platform. It was originally developed by students at Carnegie Mellon who wanted to improve their own degree audit and planning experience. So they worked closely with key stakeholders on the campus, including the registrar's office, academic advising, their faculty advisors, of course, and they focused on reducing any barriers to their progress to graduation and helping other students make the most out of their educational journey. Today, Stellic's working with a variety of institutions around the globe, focused on improving the degree planning and audit experience for both their students and, of course, for campus staff. So with that in mind, let's turn to the real stars of today's show, our speakers. So Megan, would you please begin by sharing a little bit about yourself, your position, and Cornell College with us?
Sure. Thanks, Kim. Hello, my name is Megan Hicks, and I am the registrar at one of the Cornells, Cornell College in Mount Vernon, Iowa. We do like to say and have t-shirts that say we were first. But we are much smaller, about 1,100 undergraduate students. We are a four-year private liberal arts institution, and Mount Vernon, Iowa is in the southeast side of Iowa, but only about 75% of our students were from outside of Iowa, so about 25% from locally, which is not what people expect when they initially hear, oh, Mount Vernon, Iowa, I don't know where that is. We have a very unique calendar, which is, you'll hear me talk about a lot, and how we've been able to partner with Stellic in that unique calendar. Our students take one class at a time. It's called the block system. They take 8 blocks, so 4 in the fall, 4 in the spring. Each block is about 3.5 weeks long, and then they have a little 4-day break and then start a new class. So it's immersion, intense, fast-paced, but where they're able to only focus on one course at a time all day for those 18 days of a block, which means in our office, we're taking grades, attendance, rosters, add drops, things like that 8 times a year. So you can think of me as you're having your 2 add drop periods or things like that. I often wonder, what am I doing? And we got Stellic in the fall of 21 and then went live late spring of 22. So it was a very fast implementation, not typical. And I'll talk a little bit more about that implementation process later.
Okay.
I should add, I've been at Cornell 20 years. First 10 years was in student affairs, and then I moved over to the registrar's office about 10 years ago.
Great, thank you, Megan. Rhonda, would you please introduce us to your campus and your situation there, and a little bit about your position?
Sure thing. Thanks, Kim. Hi, I'm Rhonda Kitch. I'm University Registrar at the younger Cornell University. We have about 26,000, a little over 26,000 students. That's undergraduate, professional, and graduate students. And that's on our Ithaca and Cornell Tech campuses. Ithaca is located in beautiful central New York in the Finger Lakes region. And then our Cornell Tech campus is in New York City. We also have our Weill Cornell Medical Campus in New York City and Weill Cornell Medicine in Qatar. So multiple campuses, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Cornell University is New York State's land grant institution, as well as we're a private Ivy League institution. So that's a pretty unique combo. Our founding principle is any person, any study, which plays out as a highly interdisciplinary experience for our students. We have 18 schools and colleges, and each have their own college registrar. So that poses some interesting pieces as we navigate policy, because it's not uncommon for each school and college to have their own set of policies, and they may or may not be similar to another school's policies, especially as we look at undergraduate similarities, professional similarities and differences, and so forth. Each college registrar does have a dotted line connection to me, so we're very closely connected in terms of collaboration and how we think about policies and procedures and technology moving forward. We are a semester-based campus. I've been at Cornell just a little over 4.5 years, although I've been in higher ed a little over 30 now, with the last 20 in a registrar's office. So I'll talk a little bit more about our process to select Stellic. We're fairly recent. We just signed our contract a little over a year ago. It was in late June of 23, and I'll talk about our phased implementation as we work through some of the discussion here in the next little bit.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, as all of us can tell, even though they share the name Cornell, that's about where the similarities end. And so they are quite different institutions, and so we hope to bring those different perspectives to our discussion today. Rhonda, could you tell us a little bit about the priorities for your office and what issues you were struggling with before Stellic came onto the scene?
Absolutely. Thanks, Kim. So given Cornell University's very decentralized nature, as I mentioned, policies and practices vary widely across our colleges and schools. And that also came with a variety of degree audit systems and processes. So some of our schools and colleges use our student information system, the academic advisement reports, just a couple do that. Others have some homegrown solutions that they use for degree audit. Some have spreadsheets, some use paper and pencil. It really varies based on school and college, and even sometimes academic department. And so that variety certainly does pose a challenge. And then in addition to that, two of our colleges, the two medical schools, the one in New York City, the one in Qatar, are on completely different student information systems. So that's just added little flavors of fun. And so for our Stellic implementation, we are focusing on the 16 schools and colleges that include Ithaca and Cornell Tech campus programs. And we are a PeopleSoft institution with campus solutions. So we're navigating that. And as we really started to align and think about our priorities, we focused on reducing administrative burden. As you can imagine, the many different flavors of degree audit and planning that we have certainly is a challenge administratively, but it's also a challenge on that student experience. And I'll focus on that more in a second. But that administrative burden really results in a lot of manual hours invested in student tracking and administrators tracking student academic progress. Our goal is to reduce some of our compliance concerns and risks with our current decentralized and manual processes. And really top of mind has been improving the faculty, advisor, and most importantly, student experience. Students struggle to plan their academic journey, and we are very eager for an intuitive, improved experience for our students.
Great, thank you. Megan, how did your situation at Cornell College differ from that that Rhonda just described? And kind of what were your unique challenges?
The main unique challenge was that we were doing everything by paper pencil previous to Stellic. So we had PDF checklists on our website that we would update annually. One staff member in our office, that was her summer task. And then students and advisors could go on the website and download the PDF and look for themselves against their transcript to see what their progress was. So it was lots of room for error, lots of room for different interpretations of what counts for what. So we needed something that was going to be able to eliminate that room for error and kind of bring all the information that advisors and students needed to one spot. We also primarily just did senior audits for our graduating class in the fall, and then would recheck those again in the spring. So non-seniors, they could have a degree audit if they came and asked. They had to self-initiate that and know enough of where to go, who to ask. Otherwise, that information was not readily available to them. We recognized that was a big retention issue for some of those students who could easily get off track. Then at the same time, we passed a new curriculum of changing our gen ed requirements. It was significantly different from the previous curriculum that hadn't been changed in 20 years. And lots of different rules about things could or could not double count here in this category, or this, you could have some from this bucket, but not from this bucket, and all kinds of quirks and rules that you had to keep track of. And so I was able to build a case and go to the provost and say, look, there's just too much room for error here. I don't feel confident that our faculty advisors are going to be able to keep all this straight and correctly advise students 100% of the time. And as registrars, we know we need to be right 100% of the time for graduating those students. So we had a new provost at the time, and she was able to get on board, and as part of our strategic plan, we were able to make that happen. The other piece that was a big part of that, building that case, was this new provost was regularly looking more closely at department enrollment reports and under-enrolled classes. And so she was coming to me asking for data about what happens if we cancel this class or if we change the number of offerings here. And I needed to be able to have some more data-informed information to give her about the consequence of, say, canceling a certain course, if that was going to mean this many students weren't going to be able to graduate in the next semester, or what options I was going to be able to give the students in said canceled class. And so the data and reporting and analytics options that Stellic provided went right along with those needs as well.
Well, I'd say that's a bucket full of challenges, Megan. So you had your hands full trying to solve all of those. But
Yes.
It is always interesting how many times that the rationale is we wanted students to get the same answer from everyone. It doesn't sound like that should be such a challenge, but we all know that it can be. So thank you for sharing that. let's take just a minute and talk about strategic lever and exactly what we mean by that. So in your mind, Megan, we'll start with you. What does it mean for something to be a strategic lever at our institutions?
I think for us, that I think of it as we use that leverage in order to get something else that we want. And so it involves, using data to make a strategic decision. So without X, we wouldn't be able to do Y. And so for us, without the use of Stellic to have these kind of degree progress information and planning and tracking right at their fingertips, that we would not be able to have that time to focus on other things. So what I mean by that is our advisors in particular are able to pull up Stellic, go over that information with their students in a quarter of the time that it used to take during those advising meetings. And now they're able to focus their time on those developmental conversations, getting to know the student, having true conversations about their choosing a major and what their plans for after college are going to be, or some of the reasons they might be struggling in a class, versus before that time was taken up entirely by, let's do this checklist by hand and figure out what counts for what. And the same goes for my office, that we have this information that we're giving and empowering the students and advisors to have for themselves instead of needing to rely on us to give it to them. And so that means that my office is able to focus on other initiatives that previously weren't getting attention. So we've been doing more updating of policies from the catalog to make sure that we're meeting current student needs. We're working on different transfer initiatives, things like that, that we previously didn't have as much time to devote to because we were doing all these paper audits that took us much longer.
Yeah, great. Okay. Rhonda, any other insights about strategic lever?
Yeah, absolutely. I think really as we started positioning ourselves and thinking ahead to what were our needs, some of those conversations started pretty early on. After I arrived at Cornell University, that was mid-January of 2020, and we were really it was the perfect time to really be there was new resources that were going to be allocated, and support for different initiatives, and that was an exciting time. And then, of course, the pandemic happened. And so I think of, quite honestly, I think the apparent need for something different than what we were already doing became just so evident, and really then the building the case for a comprehensive degree planning and audit solution was really solidified throughout our pandemic experience in terms of it was one of those silver linings that multiple times I said, well, we could do that if we had a comprehensive system, folks, but we can't. So we're going to have to think about this a little differently. And so I really think of, from a strategic lever perspective for Cornell University, it's really thinking about the essential infrastructure for us to support. And it seems like it's so simple, but it's not always that simple. But that essential infrastructure to support a comprehensive and well-informed student experience as students plan and track their degree progress. And as well as that, as Megan talked about, that technology that really shifts the conversation away from the logistics of registering for classes. Our advisors spend a lot of time on that right now in conversations with students, as well as manually counting, okay, where are your credits? How are you tracking this? And looking at it by the different subject codes and where they're coming along. And we want them to be able to focus in those advising and student exchanges on internships and research opportunities and scholarships and career planning and much more. So I also think, in addition to that, it's more of a yes and that, as I have observed in looking at all the different systems that our students are currently using to inform their path to register for classes each semester. They're looking at our student information system, they're looking at the catalog, they're looking at whatever degree audit their college or academic department use. And so we know there's lots of different flavors of that. They need to look at the separate schedule of classes and how that plays in. And so looking at all of these systems to try to find, how do I plan my next semester? And that's just really thinking very short term, what's happening for the next term, not thinking about what might my 4-year plan look like? What am I thinking about for the next academic year? So as we really think about this from a strategic perspective, I think streamlining the course planning, degree audit tracking, and academic progress, and then ultimately, we don't have it implemented yet, but ultimately the registration, having that in one place for students, we see that as just simply game changing.
Yes, I agree. Some of that can be mind-boggling when you think of what a student has to jump through just to get to the point to register for classes. So,
Yeah.
Rhonda, so for you, when did it become clear that Stellic's degree audit was the strategic lever that could address the challenges that you just mentioned? And what made the Stellic solution stand out as the path that you wish to adopt for your campus?
Absolutely. So I'll talk a little bit about our journey since it is pretty recent. I mentioned that our contract's quite new. We just signed in late June of 2023. We sought a very innovative partner and solution. We wanted a very comprehensive experience with a course schedule planner, intuitive audit building for our folks internally that would be doing that. We wanted ease of system integration. We wanted well-defined technical architecture, beneficial analytics, and most importantly, a very exceptional user experience for both advisors and especially students. So when we navigated a comprehensive RFP, that included 3 rounds of review with various vendors. We had extensive deep dives that included discussions on web accessibility, with faculty advisors on our campus, professional advisors, our IT stakeholders weighed in, our Division of Enrollment leadership was a part of that, and that included financial aid and our Office of Enrollment Compliance. We had our college and school registrars involved and much more. And then we also included students in our RFP. And so we invited nearly 100 individuals from across our campus community to be a part of the vendor demos and discussions, and we gathered feedback after every round. So as you can see, this did not happen overnight, but yet it's such a significant change for our campus community. We wanted to take the time and put a lot of intentional planning and thought into that. Our campus feedback was resoundingly in favor of Stellic. Attendees were very excited to see a dynamic, flexible, and holistic solution. And I'm going to call out one of my favorite comments highlighted that this vendor has its finger on the pulse of students, advisors, and administrators' real-world needs for efficiency, flexibility, and functional completeness in student academic planning. So even though we just finalized just a little over a year ago, we kicked off into last fall our implementation, and we're implementing college by college. Just again, this is a pretty substantial change for our campus. And then thinking about the size of our campus, we wanted to take this really in a incremental approach. So our first partner college is our College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Wouldn't be higher ed if we didn't have an acronym, so they're known as CALS. CALS is willing to partner for this first phase of implementation. And as we go live with some CALS programs later this academic year, we are going to use those implementations lessons learned to continue to prepare a readiness document for all of our other schools and colleges, and we'll just take them bit by bit. Everyone on campus is very eager for their turn to implement, though, as I connect with college registrars. Whenever I connect one-to-one with them, they're like, we really should be next. We have many reasons why we should be next. I'm like, everybody says that. So our campus community is pretty excited.
Well, you could be the most popular person on campus when you're choosing who gets to go next. I see that. We're going to ask Megan to kind of address that question as well. And then we do have a couple of questions that we'll turn to from our audience. But Megan, how about you? What made the Stellic solution stand out for your campus as the path you needed to go?
Well, I could echo a lot of what Rhonda said in the flexibility and comprehensive nature that Stellic offers. We looked at 3 different vendors, and it was pretty obvious very quickly that Stellic was going to be able to be the most flexible to meet our needs, and was going to be able to meet the unique cultural aspects or pieces from our campus that we needed to make sure were addressed. So things like our block calendar, where we have this different scheduling and different times students are adding and dropping and things like that. They were easily able to accommodate that. We have different requirements for different populations of, say, transfer students, and depending on how many credits they come in with, they have different requirements, and it was going to be much easier to make sure that that happened with using Stellic than some of the other vendors we were looking at. And then just during the implementation process and afterwards, we've continued to see that being true, that they're constantly innovating, using partner feedback. And so we had monthly or at first weekly one-on-ones with our customer service person at Stellic, and we would see a few months later that some of the questions that we had or things we were wondering, how do we do this? Then they would come back and say, actually, our team has worked on that, and here's a new solution, and here's how we're adapting it for the next round of kind of changes to that this will be a new feature. And so we were able to see that happen live, and that's been reassuring all along.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have a question about graduate and undergraduate degrees. So did you notice any difference between supporting your undergraduate programs versus graduate programs in developing these degree audits?
Rhonda, I'll let you take that. We don't have graduate students.
I will just comment actually. So the programs that we're working right now with our College of Agriculture and Life Sciences with CALS, we are focusing right now on undergraduate only. However, during the RFP process, our graduate registrar was closely involved. A number of different advisors that had a keen eye and thinking, and the associate deans had keen eye thinking about our graduate programs. Were milestone based with our research programs, and so wanting to ensure that what we could do and the potentials were a match for that. We had extensive questions within our RFP to make sure that that was addressed. And so while we haven't built any yet, we're still so early in our implementation, I don't anticipate concerns in terms of the level of flexibility we'd have to build our milestone-based graduate programs, as well as I think about our various professional programs in our law school, in our vet school, in our MBA programs. I don't have any concerns about tracking the coursework and experiential kinds of experiences that are required there. The flexibility is really what was so strongly noted by our campus, and given that any person, any study, a comment that I mentioned earlier about that's part of our foundation principle. I mean, that's such a blessing. It's a beautiful thing for our students. Yet administratively, you're like, yeah, well, that doesn't mean we need 1,000 options to do that, but yet we really do need to be flexible. So it can be such a beautiful thing, but it can be a challenge to navigate. And so we really needed a tool that we could build for today, for tomorrow, and for the future. And we feel really confident in Stellic's ability to do that.
And I think you're right, Rhonda. A lot of graduate colleges think they are so unique, but for the most part, we're seeing a lot of campuses rely on those milestones and the flexibility within the Stellic platform to tailor a program to any particular needs. So that falls right in line with what you've mentioned. Moving on, we're going to talk about data because, of course, we all shudder when people come to our door and ask for this, that, or the other thing. We are the keeper of the record. We have all of the data, but getting to it in a system can be a real challenge for a campus and for a registrar's office. So to pull data out when someone needs it, I don't know about your situation, but we always found it a real challenge. So where do you see this degree audit making a difference for you in that realm? Rhonda, you want to go ahead?
Sure thing. So we really looked closely at the reporting and analytics features because for our colleges and schools that are using PeopleSoft academic advisement reports, not only are they cumbersome to program, cumbersome to read as a student, as an advisor, and trust me, I love campus solutions. It's just one area of the solution though that is just, it's really difficult. But then you add to it that the reporting and analytics are really difficult to query and capture what you need. And so our goal really coming back to that administrative burden goal that we had, we really saw the ability to streamline reporting and analytics for not only us, but also our faculty and professional advisors to be able to easily filter data to get what they need. And so while, again, we have not launched anything since we're so early on, we are incredibly excited about the reporting abilities, including, and Megan has talked about this, that ability to use projection tools and dig into course demand. That's something that we're really looking forward to. Our various campus compliance teams are very excited to streamline financial aid, NCAA, veterans benefit reporting, and more within that reporting functionality. Again, we don't have a central lens on that right now, so that is something we're looking forward to. And the efficiencies we see as potentials apply to college and school administrators as well, including the central offices. We're not excluded from that. I think college registrars are going to benefit, and then of course advisors. And so we're eager to dig in. We're keeping our eyes open, but as I mentioned, we're not fully live even with our first college. So we joke a little bit that, you know, given the multi-year implementation that we're in the midst of, there's still lots that we're learning. There's not a week that goes by that our team doesn't go, oh, well, that's an interesting question. We'll have to think about that a bit. But it really is giving us a good lens into that business process review. We're not building and implementing exactly how we've always done it. We're having that ability to step back and work with our first partner college in, is this the way things should be, and build and go from there.
So Megan, you've been up on the system a while. Tell us about your success with reporting.
Well, I want to piggyback on one thing Rhonda said, and as in the implementation process, making you question how we're doing things and just, is this really the best way? And I can say that was very true for us as well, that it caused us to clean up a lot of our data in our SIS. It caused us to look at all the different categories that certain courses could be labeled as and how they were given that attribute. And I feel a lot better about the data that we have in our SIS now than I did before Stellic. And so that's a nice feeling to have. It forced us to kind of take a bigger look at that. But specific data things that we are able to use and that our departments and faculty are utilizing right now, I would say the biggest for our department chairs and our various departments are looking at, they often need to know how many of a certain section they need to offer. And so they're able to see, oh, okay, here's all the students that have declared this major, and here, this many still have this requirement left to meet. And so they know exactly, oh, in 2 years from now, I'm going to need to offer 3 capstone sections, but next year I only need to offer 2, or something like that. And so we are building the course schedule based on real live data instead of just guesses, which makes the budget and the provost a lot happier. The students using the planner feature is another way that we're able to get some of that data, so they can plan out their 4 years right there in Stellic, and people who have the admin access can see when students are planning to take what. And so that again helps me in building the schedule to be able to say, oh, I don't think we have enough sections of this particular gen ed option in this semester, or having too many in a particular semester. So being able to predict a little bit that we're going to have some low enrolled sections, and so move things around based on that data. A little bit more about what I mentioned earlier about trying to kind of tighten the budget. The provost has been wanting to decrease the number of visiting or adjunct faculty that we have. And so again, trying to right size the number of course offerings that we have to our student population. And so again, using information on how many students need to take what type of section, I'm able to give her that information of how many students need it, but also if the consequences of canceling a particular thing and how that would impact, if it's over a certain number of students' graduation progress, it would put them in a bind, then we're able to say, okay, let's rethink this. And also another kind of planning feature, the students' ability to try out different majors or minors. They can, so it's integrated with our SIS, so it shows the students class standing, their expected graduation year, and their declared majors, minors. But then in the planning side, the student can put in different majors or minors that they haven't officially declared, and I can still see that. So one example we've had recently is, we had someone from our philosophy department retire. And the provost's asking, okay, are we going to need to replace that line? Let's look at how many majors we have declared in that department, obviously. But then also wanting to see, okay, but this is official declared. We also have this bucket of this many students that have indicated they're thinking about that major. Maybe it's first years, because we don't require our students to declare until their second year. And so that gives us a way to see what students are thinking about, versus before we had no idea or no way of tracking what our first year students were thinking of declaring until they actually did that. So that's been helpful quite a bit in being able to reach out to students even and say, are you going to do this? I see you have this in your planner, but you haven't actually done it yet.
You know, and having some of that data from a decision maker, the provost or dean perspective, that's a game changer for them, you know, because not planning based on by guess and by golly, you know, or what we did 3 years ago. So let's just try that again. That's amazing, Megan. So that's good. I also know we've heard from a lot of faculty advisors or professional advisors who can, you know, run a report on their advisees and say, you know, how many advisees of mine haven't yet taken, you know, their required math class, or, you know, how many of them are within 4 credits of graduation and, you know, their GPA is not sufficient or whatever. So the data is very fluid in terms of how you can build those reports. And some are canned and you just click off of a list of what you'd like to see. But yeah, you've given us some excellent examples.
Well, we have faculty advisors that have set up their own reports that I know there's a number of them, for some reason, a lot of them are in our economics and business department. They've all kind of taught each other how to do this, that they get a report, a notice when any of their advisees gets an F in a course. And so before, we had a way for them to go see that in their self-service, and they could click here and click here and click here, you know, it's this multi-step process. This sends them an automated email when that happens about one of their advisees. And then they have a saved email in their Stellic that they can reach out to the student, and it sends that student a message. And so it's very much more intuitive for the faculty advisors.
Great. Good. We're going to talk a little bit about time saving. And so how in your mind, how does a degree management system like Stellic facilitate staff, particularly in the registrar's office, using their time more efficiently? And so how can it improve their work situation and the workflow within the office? Megan, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Well, I mentioned our paper pencil senior degree audits that we do every fall. So the first year we used Stellic for those audits. We were done with that senior audit process 6 weeks sooner than the previous years. So we were able to have gone through every senior. We meet with every senior individually between a couple of us in our office, and that saved 6 weeks of our time. And then in the spring, when we did that second round of verification, that process was 3 weeks shorter in about April. And so that was amazing for our office. We actually had to go back to our list of dream projects and say, okay, which one are we going to prioritize? We actually have time now. And then, like I mentioned before, the advisors and their advising meetings, being able to focus on different types of conversations than they were having before, because in the past, all they had time to do was try and look up on various lists or in the catalog or what counts for what. And, oh, can we double count this? I forget. Are you in the requirement that can, or are you in the one that can't? Let me go check that out. And that's all they had time to do. So that's really shifted that advising relationship. Another specific example is our waivers and substitutions. We used to have faculty doing everything from emailing us saying, oh, Johnny is able to count this class for this requirement for the major. And we'd say, oh, we have a form for you to fill out. Can you please do that? And they'd say, oh, I can't find it. Here's my email, right? And so we have everything stored in Stellic. The advisor or the department chair, depending on how you want it set up, can submit the waiver substitution right there for the individual student. And so then anyone in my office can go to that student's record and see, oh, yep, this was waived and this is the substitution. All the details are there once you click into it based on why they said that. and I can get a report of those at the end of the year.
And can you touch on, Megan, about building the audit? How difficult is it to, build the
Right.
plan for a particular major?
Yeah. So when we started in our implementation process, we did opt to have Stellic do the initial builds for us. And so they created all the majors and minors audits. But since then, we've obviously had changes that were approved by departments to their requirements, or we've had a few new majors approved. And so we've had to build those ourselves. It was very intuitive. There's ways that you can go back in and use one that's already built and make edits to it, or you can start from scratch. And so we have had a new staff member in our office just start a year ago, and she was able to look at a couple of the online tools that Stellic has on their website for partners, and then look at some of our documentation internally, and she learned it probably within a week.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Rhonda, let's go back to the registrar's office staff and their work load and how to make that more efficient. I know you're still in the implementation phase, but any information you can share from your experience so far?
Yeah, absolutely, Kim. So I think about my experiences, and I've worked in a central registrar shop that this would have been just part of doing everything, whereas and there really isn't a right and a wrong. It's just a matter of what campus culture is. Well, at Cornell University, the central office of the university registrar does nothing with tracking academic department and college requirements and working with students on major changes, anything like that. That's all happening within the school college level. And so while I would say thinking about from an efficiency standpoint, we're going to see efficiencies in our college and school registrar areas that it's going to have a profound impact from advisors to college registrars for what that tracking will be, going from the manual to being able to just go, okay, look at that, you've met your department requirements and your major requirements and the college requirements and the university requirements. Being able to do that without the manual counting is really going to be transformational. I also just want to mention, because I see this as that eye on the prize, that long-term solution, as I talked about building having a solution for today, tomorrow, and beyond, that I think I have witnessed multiple times that our colleges really struggle with implementing certain curricular updates based on their current practices and certainly their current technology. And so I see that Stellic will really support a very nimble curricular innovation approach, and that in addition to what Megan talked about with using student enrollment planning data, I think will be incredibly robust and really help build for those programs for that future needs that we have as an institution that we can't even imagine yet. I think our current tools really do pose some challenges. It's not impossible, just takes longer, or it's more manual time, and that's certainly a challenge. So I think the colleges and schools are really going to feel that transformational approach. We are supporting and implementing this centrally, and so we have the audits are built by central folks in our office, but they are, we're not the ones clearing students and clearing graduates. So it's just a different approach, and I'd be happy to talk more with anybody that is navigating that, because it is a little bit different, and it's not a one size fits all.
Great. Okay. And thank you for mentioning that, Rhonda, because our two presenters have agreed to share their email addresses with all of us. And so at the conclusion of today's presentation, we'll reach out to all of our attendees with that information. And if you have heard something in one of their responses that you'd like to follow up on, please feel free. They are very generous with their time, and they'd be happy to hear from you. Each of you played a very influential role in your campus evaluation and implementation of this platform for your particular campus. What would you say to someone who may be hesitant about taking on a degree audit implementation? So Rhonda, you're kind of in the thick of things right now. What would be your advice to someone who says, I don't know about taking that on? That sounds like a big challenge to me.
Yeah. So I think it's our role as registrars to navigate those challenges and think about how we can be more strategic and focus on how we can support our campus community, support the student experience, and think about better ways to do things. And so I mentioned that I think this is something that has been it was the right place, right time kind of thing from a Cornell University perspective, that because as I mentioned, the pandemic really highlighted our gaps in our inability to query and evaluate degree progress data. And so I encourage, if this is something you're exploring or thinking about, even if you are on one central system and you're thinking about making a change, or if you're on a very fragmented approach, I think taking that time, having an institution and your leaders taking the time to spend discovery time determining your priorities, and they could be similar to ours, they could be very different, but then adding to that, and I think that's what it comes back to, I think for most of us, if not all, is prioritizing the concept that our students should be able to track and plan their academic journey in a modern solution. And that's one we've circled back to again and again, and because our students don't have that experience right now. So I think it's really worth the time to do your homework and plan before you move forward. And that really helps build the case, not only for the why and talking to your campus community. It builds your momentum. It can also help build their case for project funding and implementation, because that even at an institution like Cornell University, that's not a simple and easy journey. And so I really want to encourage campuses to really think through those steps, and fast tracking your way to an RFP is it can work, but it might not be that foundational approach. I will be candid too that we explored each vendor's roadmap and vision during the RFP process. And for us, it was Stellic's ongoing commitment to innovation, and that, as Megan talked about, it really stems from institutional and partner needs. That was evident in our discussions with Stellic, and so we're excited about that. And we went from there. So I'd be happy to talk, after the semester's underway, with anyone exploring next steps and wanting to think about how to craft this and move forward. But I really encourage you, don't rush that part too much, because that momentum, I mean, quite honestly, the excitement that's built on our campus, I think is really quite phenomenal. And while I'm not dismissive of the change management that comes with it, I think because our systems are so fragmented and out of date, that it actually builds the case for once our members of our campus community saw what the potentials were within these vendor demos, that they really think and go, well, we might not be able to do it the way we've always done it, but yet, is it okay? Like, can we step back and take a look at why we might want to make a change? And it could be for the betterment of having a centralized and centrally supported tool that could really make our lives better, but most importantly, the student lives better. That change management started to happen a little bit more organically, rather than us saying, no, sorry, you've got to change it all. I think that part is something that has been invaluable, and that I think really lies in us taking the time to do that discovery homework.
Yeah, thank you. Megan, anything to add from your perspective?
I've been trying to just think of something different than we've already said before, and my thought comes to we've kept saying that students should have the ability to track and plan in the modern system, like Rhonda just said. They should have that ability, and now we're changing our language that we expect you to track and plan on your own. We have given you this data, and now it's your responsibility, student, to be logging in there to see that you're making progress, to make sure the class you're taking counts the way you think it should. And so I want to stop having those conversations with seniors that would come into my office for their senior audit and say, oh, but no one told me I had to do X, or I thought this class, look, this one that I took 2 years ago, this counted, and me have to say, no, you didn't read the full thing. It doesn't. And so I don't have to do that anymore because we're giving them that information. And I had an example this March where I had a parent calling me saying, I can't believe my transfer student isn't right. And so I was able to look in Stellic and show the student logged in this date in August, another date, maybe a couple weeks later, and never once again since then. And so I said, your student knew that this tool was there, looked at it, used it these 2 times, and then didn't go back and check some more. And so putting that ownership and responsibility on the student, and now I have a tool where that's tracked. And when they're meeting with someone in our office or their advisor, we keep notes on the student in Stellic, and those are all saved. And I can see, well, you can make them private if you want, but I can see most of the notes. And so I know, oh, look, it says here you met with your advisor on this date, and this is what they told you. So it takes that communication and really ups it a lot.
Well, I don't understand, Megan. What's going to happen to the excuse that nobody ever told me?
Right. Well,
I mean, come on. We do have a quick question about how live is the information in Stellic? For example, during registration, do you need to wait for the next day to run reports?
we have ours set that it updates, I think it's like 4 o'clock in the morning every day. And we have had discussions about, do we do it twice so that it happens again, say around noon or so, but we haven't felt the need to do that quite yet. But for us, it's at least once a day, it pulls in that live information.
So it's a campus decision basically on how often you want to repopulate the Stellic systems. So,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We're going to wrap up with just a few final questions from our presenters, and then we'll go to our Q&A, questions that have been posed by our attendees. So, Megan, kind of a philosophical question here. What do you see as the most significant change for your campus to occur as a result of this implementation?
I'd say the increased in consistency and accuracy of information. And then for advisors and students to be able to have one place where they can go and check and just know that they can rely on that information instead of having to go multiple different places to check different lists and things. And then just that going back to the empowering students to plan ahead and putting that information so they can visualize their path towards graduation and completion.
Yeah. Rhonda, anything to add from your campus?
We're very excited about just that modern updated tool that students can use. And I think in addition, we know that students aren't going to need training on how to use the system. It's so intuitive. And during our RFP process, we also visited with multiple campuses in essentially a reference check kind of format. And campuses we talked to highlighted the ease of adoption and that training was certainly not necessary. And so we're really excited about that in terms of one place for students to track everything.
Right, okay. This question goes to the broader context of all of the many systems that we have on our campuses to do this, that, and the other things. So why should the registrar's office or the institution in particular be thinking about degree audit as the next strategic project for them, as opposed to, say, some other university-wide system? Rhonda?
Sure. Well, I know registrar colleagues are well aware that we're juggling many systems beyond our SIS. That's systems supporting diploma production and transcript ordering and catalog and section scheduler, curriculum management, classroom and event scheduling, the list goes on, transfer, course evals. So I really think focusing on a flexible, dynamic degree planning and audit solution, providing that information is critical in terms of working with student and advisor expectations. So while we as an institution, in one Cornell fashion, we are currently in ERP discussions that span our Ithaca, New York City, and Qatar campuses. We really look at it's imperative that we have a degree planning solution that will be interoperable and integrate with our next SIS and continue to result in that seamless and consistent student experience. Students will be live on Stellic well before we transition to our next SIS. And so we really, we want them to see that seamless, consistent experience and not feel any changes along the way.
Okay.
It's all a part of the juggle.
Yes, isn't it? Rhonda, we'll start with you on this question because it has to do with combined degrees. And so I'm assuming undergraduate, graduate combined degrees. So if you have such things, how are you able to manage that through the degree audit? Do you have to do separate tools for each degree, or are you able to combine that?
Yeah, that's such a great question. That's something that we looked at in our RFP. The programs that we're building, the undergraduate programs that we've built so far, have really focused on very traditional pathways for undergraduates, our undergraduate Cal students in our College of Ag and Life Sciences. And so we've not built those yet, but yet we have a number of, whether you want to think about them as you know, early admit, 4+1, whatever kind of programs, we are keeping those in the back of our mind, because we are going to be navigating those and need to support students along the way, students and advisors. And so I don't have examples that I can give quite yet, just because we have not built any out yet. That's certainly something that we look closely at, because it's very much a part of our campus community.
Okay. And as a PeopleSoft school, what were the factors that went into your decision to select Stellic versus the PeopleSoft AAR?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I've been using PeopleSoft Campus Solutions for well over 20 years. I love PeopleSoft, and I'm not saying that to be silly. I think the one area that really is a challenge in terms of maintenance and keeping it up to date, and then navigating exception experience, certainly is the academic advisement module. And if it really were something that behind the scenes it was a challenge, but yet it looked great for advisors, it was intuitive for students, I probably would have made more of a case for it. But as we really took a deeper dive, I knew that if we were going to, because only a couple of our schools and colleges are using PeopleSoft Academic Advisement Report on our campus. So if we were going to deploy that campus wide, I knew I would need a mini army to be able to program and keep it up to date. And that was certainly problematic. And so looking at our long-term future, even I don't know what's next for ERP, but we know that any of the these big ones that are in live right now, that we know that there's a time frame of a sunset that's coming. And so I didn't want to be navigating a degree audit implementation and setup as we were looking forward to our next ERP implementation. I wanted something that we could do now and that would set us up for the future. So it's not that I don't like the academic advisement report. It's just, it is a struggle.
Right. Okay.
And I'd be happy to talk more offline on that.
Yeah, and you're not alone in those thoughts. Megan, one for you. Can you expand on how this system has benefited your transfer students?
Definitely. We're just in the midst of some of those benefits right now, where incoming transfer students, their credits have been evaluated. We've entered them on their Cornell transcript, and now we're trying to get them registered before they come to campus. And we have the ability this summer, for those transfer students, once they've deposited and we've entered their credits in our SIS, they then can have access to go into Stellic and see for themselves how those credits transferred in and what counts for what and what requirements they have left. We just started that this summer, and it was just a matter of us figuring out how to make that live for them. And but it's a pretty simple process. And so it actually was coming from that example I just gave earlier about the student in March whose parent called me and said, "What do you mean my student's not going to graduate?" And so we're turning that access on even earlier now. The other piece is that we have different requirements based on how many credits you start with. You have to take fewer of these and fewer different number of these types of gen ed classes. And so that was really easy for us to program into Stellic so that once the student starts, they know exactly what their difference is for them compared to their roommate or somebody else.
Okay. And another question regarding graduation. Do students apply for graduation via Stellic on your campus, Megan? And is there a way to track that?
We've kept it as a separate application that they fill out on our website. And then once we do the audit with them, that there's a way that you log it and officially say that meeting has happened and kind of capture that audit at that moment. And so I would say both and.
Yeah, yeah. And I know a lot of campuses have integrated
Right.
in Stellic, but it's, again, an easy fix to collaborate between the two if you have a
Right.
student with one. Okay, this one will be probably a little bit challenging. How did you convince the colleges to change their workflow and adopt the degree audit?
Do you want me to take that one?
Okay.
I know we're close on time. Honestly, I think looking at our pros versus cons and in terms of the benefits for efficiency, our colleges have been well, and again, we're working with one right now, but they are all very eager to have the conversation, think about what business process reform might be necessary and needed, and think forward. And I'm not dismissing the change management that comes with that. But if you want to talk more about what our current state is and the literal hundreds, if not thousands of hours that are going into degree tracking each semester right now across our academic departments and what it will be, they know that the change is going to be worth it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank our presenters again for sharing their expertise and their experiences. And I also want to thank the audience, of course, for taking time to be with us today. In a moment, a short poll will be sent to your screen. I encourage you to take a second and provide a response to that. And of course, as we've mentioned earlier, we'll be sending a follow-up email to each of our audience members with instructions on how to obtain additional information on today's topic, should you wish. Thanks again to everyone and enjoy the rest of your day.